Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! In the dimly lit hallway, a forgotten relic lay dormant on the shelf, concealed among the mundane artifacts of seasonal attire. This unassuming container harbored a clandestine aspect of Eric's life, an aspect he had meticulously shielded from the world, including the eyes of his 5-year spouse. As Eric entered his house, the familiar ambiance was conspicuous by its absence. The customary chirpiness that usually greeted him, either from Melissa's home office or the resonant clatter of kitchen utensils, was notably missing. He called out, "Mel, is that you?" But the only response was a quiet chime, glass on wood, beckoning him towards the living room. There he found Melissa sitting on their beige sofa, a glass of red wine in hand, her expression unreadable. Beside her on the coffee table sat the cardboard box, its contents arranged in a neat display. His heart dropped to his stomach. The emerald green blouse he'd ordered online last month, the knee-length black skirt, the carefully selected auburn wig that had cost nearly $200. Makeup supplies still in their packaging. Eric froze in the doorway, his mouth suddenly dry. "I can explain," he started, the words coming out as barely more than a whisper. Melissa took a slow sip of her wine, her eyes never leaving him. "I was looking for the extra throw blankets," she said evenly, "for when my sister visits next weekend." Time seemed to stop. Eric's mind raced through possible responses, excuses, apologies, anything that might salvage what was surely about to become the end of everything. He'd kept this part of himself hidden for so long, terrified of the rejection he was certain would follow discovery. "How long?" Melissa asked, gesturing toward the items with her wine glass.
"Since before we met,"
he admitted, still standing in the doorway, afraid to move closer.
It's not something I've ever shared with anyone."
To his complete surprise, Melissa patted the space next to her on the sofa.
"Sit. Talk to me about this."
Cautiously, Eric crossed the room and lowered himself onto the sofa, maintaining a careful distance from both his wife and the evidence of his secret life. His hands trembled slightly as he folded them in his lap.
"Is there a name?"
she asked, her voice gentler than he'd expected.
"When you
dress this way?" Eric swallowed hard.
"Grace,"
he answered, the name slipping out before he could reconsider.
"I call myself Grace."
A slight smile played at the corners of Melissa's mouth. "Grace," she repeated. "It suits you. The emerald green would bring out your eyes." Of all the scenarios Eric had imagined for this moment, and he had imagined it many times, always with dread, this calm acceptance had never been among them. He stared at Melissa, searching her face for signs of disgust or anger, finding none.
"You're not upset?"
Melissa set her wine glass down and turned to face him fully.
"I'm surprised, yes,
and a little hurt you didn't trust me enough to share this. But upset?
No."
She reached for his hand. "We've been married for 5 years, Eric. I know who you are. This doesn't change that." Relief crashed through him with such force that his eyes filled with tears. "I wanted to tell you so many times. I just didn't know how." "Well, now I know," she said, squeezing his hand. "And I have questions. But first, I have to say, your taste in blouses is excellent, but your makeup collection needs serious help." A startled laugh escaped him.
"I've mostly been guessing."
"Clearly." Her smile widened as she reached for her phone. Actually, I think this calls for reinforcements. My friends have been wanting to meet you properly for ages. What? No, Mel, I can't. Panic surged through him. Melissa held up a hand. Not tonight, not tomorrow, but soon. She tilted her head, studying him. Unless you really don't want to. This is your journey, Eric. I'm just offering to walk alongside you. The weeks that followed were a revelation. Rather than hiding his collection away again, Eric, with Melissa's encouragement, began expanding it. Shopping trips became joint adventures, Melissa's expertise guiding him toward cuts and styles that would flatter his frame. Evenings at home sometimes included makeup tutorials, Melissa patiently demonstrating techniques while Eric practiced. The first time he fully dressed as Grace, in front of his wife, he emerged from the bathroom wearing the emerald green blouse paired with the black skirt, the auburn wig styled in loose waves that framed his face. Melissa had helped with his makeup, creating a natural look that enhanced rather than masked his features. "Well?" he asked nervously, smoothing the blouse down over his hips. "How do I look?" Melissa circled him slowly, making small adjustments, tucking a strand of the auburn wig behind his ear, straightening the collar of the blouse. "You look beautiful, Grace," she said simply. That night, as they sat together watching a movie, Melissa casually mentioned that she'd told her 3 closest friends about Grace. "You what?" Eric nearly spilled his wine. "Relax," Melissa said. "These are my ride-or-die friends, the ones who helped me through my dad's death and held my hair back during college. They're good people." "But what did they say?" He couldn't imagine any reaction other than shock or ridicule. Melissa grinned. "They want to meet Grace. Properly. They've invited you to girls' night next Friday." The invitation hung in the air between them. Girls' night was a monthly tradition for Melissa and her friends, rotating between wine bars, restaurants, and each other's homes. Eric had always been peripherally aware of these gatherings, seeing Melissa off with a kiss before settling in for an evening alone. "I can't," he said automatically. Mel, that's public. Other people would see." "It's at the Vineyard, that little wine bar across town. Dark lighting, private booths. No one would know. And even if they did," she shrugged. "My friends are protective as hell. Anyone gives you trouble, and Diana would probably stab them with her stiletto." Eric laughed nervously. "I've never even met your friends as me. And you want the first time to be as Grace?" "They're curious," Melissa admitted. "But in a good way. No one's judging, I promise. They just want to know this part of you too." The week passed in a blur of anticipation and dread. Eric fluctuated between excited preparation and moments of panic when he considered canceling altogether. Melissa remained steadfast, neither pushing nor retreating, simply offering support when needed. Friday arrived with alarming speed. Eric left work early, claiming a family engagement, and spent nearly 3 hours preparing. The shower seemed to wash away not just the day's sweat, but some of his masculine armor as well. As he shaved meticulously, applied moisturizer, and began the careful process of transformation, Eric felt himself slipping into Grace, not just in appearance, but in mindset. The auburn wig had been professionally styled earlier in the week, the loose waves now falling just past his shoulders. Melissa had selected a knee-length black cocktail dress with a modest neckline and 3/4 sleeves, elegant but not overly formal for a wine bar. Black heels completed the outfit, along with a simple silver necklace and matching bracelet. Makeup took the longest. Despite weeks of practice, His hands still trembled as he applied foundation, concealer, a touch of contour to soften his jawline. Melissa supervised the application of eyeliner, stepping in only when he struggled with the wingtip. "There," she said, stepping back to assess her handiwork. "Perfect." Grace now, turned to the mirror and barely recognized herself. The person reflected back wasn't a man in women's clothing, but a woman with auburn hair, luminous eyes, enhanced by careful makeup, and a nervous smile. "Ready?" Melissa asked, squeezing her hand. "No," Grace admitted, "but I don't think I ever will be, so let's go anyway." The drive to the vineyard felt surreal. Grace kept checking her reflection in the passenger mirror, making small adjustments to her wig, dabbing at imagined smudges in her makeup. Melissa reached over at a stoplight to still her fidgeting hands. "You look beautiful," she said firmly. "Stop fussing or you'll mess up your lipstick." The vineyard was mercifully dim inside, just as Melissa had promised. Rich wood paneling and deep burgundy upholstery created an intimate atmosphere, with well-spaced booths offering privacy. Melissa led the way confidently, Grace following a half-step behind, conscious of her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. "Over here!" Melissa called, waving toward a booth in the far corner where 3 women sat, already working on a bottle of wine. Grace hesitated, panic threatening to overwhelm her. "Mel, I don't think—" "Too late, they've seen us." Melissa looped her arm through Grace's. "Just be yourself, the feminine version of yourself," she added with a grin. The women at the table looked up as they approached. Grace recognized them from photos around the house and occasional brief encounters when they'd picked Melissa up for their nights out. Diana, the tall blonde with sharp features and an even sharper wit. Rebecca, petite with dark curls and a perpetual mischievous expression. And Vanessa, willowy with straight brown hair and kind eyes. "Ladies," Melissa announced, "I'd like you to meet Grace." A moment of silence fell over the table as 3 pairs of eyes assessed her with undisguised curiosity. Grace felt her cheeks flush beneath her foundation. "Well, damn," Diana said finally, raising her wine glass. "You've got better legs than I do. That's just unfair." The tension broke. Rebecca scooted over to make room in the booth.
"Sit. We've already started the first bottle, but we've been waiting for you for the good gossip."
Tentatively, Grace slid into the booth, careful of her dress. Melissa settled in beside her, a reassuring presence. "We ordered a cheese plate," Vanessa said, passing a menu toward Grace. "But fair warning, Diana's already eaten all the Gouda." "It's the only decent cheese on the plate," Diana defended. "The rest is too fancy for its own good." "Says the woman who once made us try a cheese that smelled like gym socks," Rebecca countered. "That was a cultural experience." Just like that, Grace found herself enveloped in their easy banter, the focus shifting away from her presence and onto the comfortable rhythms of long-time friendship. Melissa squeezed her knee under the table. A silent, "I told you so." The waiter arrived with a fresh bottle of wine and additional glasses. "Ladies," he acknowledged with a professional nod, setting down the glasses without a second glance at Grace. "So," Diana said, once he'd left, leaning forward with undisguised interest. "How long has this been going on? Melissa said you've been closeted, figuratively and literally, apparently, for years." "Diana!" Vanessa chided. "We agreed to ease into the personal questions." "It's okay," Grace found herself saying. her voice pitched slightly higher than Eric's usual baritone. "I've been like this since college, at least, but only in private until now." "Well, you look fantastic," Rebecca assured her. "That shade of lipstick is perfect for your coloring, and I love the auburn hair. It suits you." "Thanks," Grace murmured, still adapting to receiving compliments on her appearance from someone other than Melissa. "It's all still very new, being out like this." "First time in public?" Vanessa asked gently. Grace nodded, taking a sip of wine to steady her nerves. "Well, you're killing it," Diana declared. "I've been wearing heels for 20 years and still can't walk as gracefully as you just did across the room." "Speaking of killing it," Rebecca interjected, "has Melissa told you about her boss's latest catastrophe? The one with the client from Tokyo and the karaoke disaster?" Just like that, the conversation shifted again, drawing Grace into their circle without making her the center of attention. As the second bottle of wine was opened and shared, Grace felt her shoulders relaxing, her gestures becoming more fluid, more natural. These women weren't judging her, they were including her. "So, Grace," Vanessa asked during a lull in conversation, "does Eric share your excellent taste in wine, or is that uniquely yours?" The question caught her off guard. This separation of herself into two distinct people. "I suppose we both enjoy it," she answered carefully. "But as Grace, I find I prefer white wines. Eric usually drinks red." "Interesting," Diana mused. Different aspects of personality expressing themselves through different preferences. Like how I'm a complete hard-ass at work but secretly binge-watch romantic comedies at home. Which isn't actually a secret since you tell everyone, Rebecca pointed out. "It's called owning my complexity, Becca. You should try it sometime." As the evening progressed, Grace found herself drawn into discussions about relationships, careers, and the universal frustrations of finding comfortable yet attractive shoes. She contributed cautiously at first, then with increasing confidence as she realized her perspective was valued. "Men just don't understand," Diana was saying, deep into their third bottle. "Last month, I told my husband my feet were killing me in these new pumps, and he actually said, with a straight face, 'Why don't you just wear comfortable shoes?' As if we haven't thought of that." Rebecca laughed. "Actually," Grace ventured, "I've been on both sides of that equation now. The difference in expectations is eye-opening." All four women leaned in, suddenly intensely interested. "Tell us everything," Diana demanded. "This is like getting insider intelligence." And so Grace found herself explaining the contrasts she'd observed, the freedom of movement in men's clothing versus the restrictive nature of women's fashion, the different social expectations, the additional time required for preparation. "But there's also something liberating about the transformation," she admitted. "The attention to detail, the ritual of it. As Eric, I never thought much about how clothes expressed identity. As Grace, it's become a language." "That's profound," Vanessa said thoughtfully. "Most of us were born into this experience, but you've chosen it. There's something powerful in that choice." By the time they'd finished the third bottle, Grace felt as though she'd known these women for years rather than hours. The initial awkwardness had dissolved completely, replaced by a warm sense of acceptance. When Rebecca suggested moving the gathering to a dessert place down the street, Grace agreed without hesitation. Outside in the cool evening air, she walked arm in arm with Melissa, their heels clicking in tandem on the sidewalk. Diana walked ahead, gesturing animatedly as she told a story about her latest dating disaster. Vanessa and Rebecca followed behind, debating the merits of chocolate versus fruit-based desserts. You doing okay? Melissa asked quietly. Grace smiled, squeezing her wife's arm. Better than okay. They're wonderful, Mel. Thank you for this. The dessert cafe was busier than the wine bar had been, with brighter lighting and more people. For a moment, Grace hesitated at the entrance, feeling exposed. But Diana was already claiming a table by the window, waving them over imperiously. Hurry up, ladies. I need cheesecake immediately, or I might perish. Rebecca rolled her eyes. She gets dramatic when she's hungry. I get fabulous when I'm hungry, Diana corrected. And also slightly murderous. So let's order quickly. Seated around the table with plates of decadent desserts, the conversation flowed as easily as it had at the wine bar. Grace found herself laughing openly, contributing to stories, even sharing a few of her own experiences. When the waitress addressed her as ma'am while refilling coffee cups, a small thrill ran through her. So, Diana said, scraping the last bit of cheesecake from her plate. Same time next month? Vanessa's hosting, which means we'll be drinking those fancy organic wines that taste like dirt but are supposedly good for us. They're sustainable and ethically produced, Vanessa protested. The complex flavor profile is an acquired taste. Speaking of next month, Rebecca turned to Grace. Will you be joining us again? Because we're going to need more insider intel on the male psyche, for research purposes. Grace glanced at Melissa, who simply smiled and shrugged, leaving the decision entirely to her. The question hung in the air, representing far more than just a social invitation. It was acceptance, inclusion in a circle that had previously been closed to her, not just as Eric's wife's friends, but as one of them. Actually, Grace heard herself saying, I was wondering if I might host the next gathering, at our place. 4 pairs of eyebrows raised in surprise, including Melissa's. I mean, Grace continued, suddenly worried she'd overstepped. If that would be okay, I could make tapas. Melissa always says my patatas bravas are the best she's ever had. Hell yes, Diana declared immediately. I've been dying to see your place anyway. Melissa's always been weirdly protective about having us over. Melissa laughed. That's because the last time you visited someone's home for the first time, you rearranged their living room furniture and told them their color scheme was an assault on good taste. It was mustard yellow and maroon, Mel. I did them a favor. As the women dissolved into laughter and began planning the next month's gathering, Grace felt a profound sense of belonging. The evening had transformed not just her social circle, but her understanding of herself. Grace wasn't just a secret identity to be hidden away in a cardboard box. She was a vital, authentic part of who she was. The check arrived, and as the women sorted out payment, Grace leaned over to kiss Melissa's cheek. Thank you, she whispered. For everything. You did all the hard work, Melissa replied. I just opened the door. The drive home was filled with comfortable silence, both of them processing the evening's events. As they pulled into their driveway, Melissa turned to Grace with a thoughtful expression. So, hosting next month, huh? That's a big step. Grace nodded, suddenly nervous again. Too much too soon? No, Melissa said slowly. But it does make me wonder, where do you see this going? Is Grace becoming more than just an occasional appearance? The question struck at the heart of something Grace had been considering throughout the evening. The freedom she'd felt, the authenticity. It had awakened a longing for more. I think, she said carefully, Grace might need to be a bigger part of our lives, if that's something you'd be comfortable with. Melissa reached across the console to take her hand. I fell in love with you. All of you. Even the parts I didn't know existed yet. Whatever form that takes, I'm in. The next morning, Eric awoke with a sense of lightness he hadn't felt in years. The auburn wig sat on its stand on the dresser, a visible reminder that Grace was no longer a secret to be hidden away. Melissa slept beside him, her breathing deep and even, one arm flung across his chest. Careful not to wake her, he slipped out of bed and padded to the bathroom. In the mirror, traces of eyeliner remained, despite his attempts to remove all the makeup the night before. Rather than feeling alarmed, he studied his reflection with newfound appreciation. The lines between Eric and Grace seemed less defined now, less like separate identities and more like complementary aspects of a whole self. In the kitchen, he began preparing breakfast, humming softly as he mixed batter for pancakes. The previous night replayed in his mind, the warmth of acceptance, the easy camaraderie, the feeling of rightness that had settled over him as the evening progressed. Melissa appeared in the doorway, hair tousled from sleep, wearing one of his t-shirts as a nightgown. "Morning," she mumbled, making a beeline for the coffee pot. "You're chipper today." "I am," he agreed, pouring batter onto the hot griddle. "I was thinking, what if we cleared out the guest room, made it into a proper dressing room for Grace?" Melissa blinked, coffee mug halfway to her lips. "You're serious?" "Very." He flipped a pancake. "If last night proved anything, it's that Grace deserves better than a cardboard box in the back of the closet, literally and metaphorically." A slow smile spread across Melissa's face. "I could help you design it. Built-in storage for your growing wardrobe, proper lighting for makeup application."
"A vanity,"
he added, enthusiasm building.
"And maybe some room for future expansions."
"Future expansions?" Melissa raised an eyebrow, setting her coffee down. "Such as?" Eric transferred pancakes to a plate, considering his words carefully. "I don't know exactly, but last night felt like a beginning, not an end point. Grace wants more." Melissa studied him thoughtfully. "More public outings? More time?" "Both, maybe." He brought the plates to the table, sitting across from her. "Last night was the first time I've ever felt completely comfortable as Grace around other people. It made me realize how much energy I've spent hiding, compartmentalizing. And now I'm thinking about integration, not separation." He met her gaze steadily.
"Would that be okay with you, if Grace became a more regular presence in our lives?"
Melissa reached across the table to take his hand. "I meant what I said last night. I'm in this with you, whatever form it takes. If anything, seeing you so happy, so complete last night, it made me realize how much of yourself you've been holding back." Relief washed through him. "I love you," he said simply. "I love you too. Both parts of you." The following week passed in a flurry of activity. The spare bedroom transformation began in earnest, with Eric and Melissa working together to clear out old furniture and design the new space. Paint samples in various shades of sage green and soft lavender lined one wall as they debated color schemes. Furniture catalogs littered the kitchen table, pages marked with potential vanities and storage solutions. Online shopping became a shared evening activity, with Melissa helping Grace expand her wardrobe beyond occasional evening wear to include everyday options, comfortable jeans cut for a feminine figure, casual tops in flattering colors, even a pair of fashionable yet practical flats for longer outings. "What about work?" Melissa asked one evening as they scrolled through a selection of cardigans.
Are you thinking about bringing Grace into that part of your life too?
The question gave Eric pause. His position as a marketing director at a mid-sized firm had always felt distinctly separate from his life as Grace.
I haven't thought that far ahead,
he admitted.
That would be complicated.
Melissa nodded, not pushing further. One step at a time, then. As the month progressed, those steps became increasingly confident. Grace made appearances not just in the privacy of their home, but on quick errands to the grocery store, a Saturday afternoon at the bookshop, even dinner at a small restaurant across town. Each outing built her confidence, each interaction where she was recognized and addressed as a woman, reinforcing the sense that this was not just a costume, but an authentic expression of self. The night before the scheduled girls' night at their home, Eric stood in the newly completed dressing room, admiring the transformation. Sage green walls created a calming atmosphere, complemented by white trim and carefully selected artwork. The vanity, with its well-lit mirror, dominated one wall, makeup and skincare products arranged neatly on its surface. A clothing rack held carefully curated outfits, color-coordinated and arranged by season and occasion. "What do you think?" Melissa asked from the doorway. "Everything you imagined?" "Better," Eric replied, turning slowly to take it all in. "It's perfect." "There's something else," Melissa said, stepping into the room with a small gift bag. "A housewarming present for Grace's new space." Curious, Eric accepted the bag and pulled out a small wooden plaque. Engraved in elegant script were the words, "Grace's Sanctuary." "To make it official," Melissa explained. "This space is yours, not hidden, not temporary." Emotion welled in Eric's throat. "Thank you," he managed. "For understanding, for accepting, for everything." "You don't need to thank me for loving you exactly as you are," Melissa said simply. "Now, about tomorrow night. Have you decided what Grace is wearing for her hosting debut?" Grace had, in fact, spent considerable time planning her outfit for the gathering. After much deliberation, she'd settled on dark wash jeans, paired with a flowing emerald green blouse. A callback to the first outfit Melissa had discovered, but elevated with better fit and styling. The auburn wig, now supplemented by regular visits to a stylist who specialized in helping transgender clients and crossdressers, would be worn in loose waves past her shoulders. The day of the gathering arrived with a mixture of excitement and nervous anticipation. Eric left work early, transitioning to Grace with practiced efficiency in her new sanctuary. The ritual of transformation had become smoother with repetition. Foundation applied evenly, contouring subtle but effective, eye makeup enhancing rather than overwhelming. Melissa returned from work to find Grace already dressed and arranging tapas ingredients in the kitchen. "Look at you," she said appreciatively. "Domestic goddess mode activated." Grace laughed, tucking a strand of auburn hair behind her ear. "I wanted everything to be perfect. Is it too much? The food? The outfit?" "It's exactly right," Melissa assured her, dropping a kiss on her cheek. "Let me change quickly and I'll help with the final preparations." By the time the doorbell rang announcing the first arrival, the living room had been transformed with additional seating arranged for conversation. Wine glasses set out beside an assortment of bottles and platters of Spanish-inspired appetizers arranged artfully on the coffee table. Soft jazz played in the background, creating an atmosphere both sophisticated and welcoming. "Ready?" Melissa asked, giving Grace's hand a reassuring squeeze. Grace took a deep breath and nodded. "Ready." Opening the door to welcome Diana, Rebecca, and Vanessa, who had arrived together, Grace felt none of the paralyzing fear that had accompanied her first girls' night out. Instead, there was only pleasant anticipation, the joy of welcoming friends into a space that now fully represented her complete self. "Ladies," she greeted them warmly, gesturing them inside. "Welcome to our home." The evening unfolded with the easy familiarity of established friendship. The women exclaimed over the house tour, complimented Grace's cooking, and settled into conversation that flowed from work frustrations to relationship updates to social commentary. Grace moved among them confidently, refilling wine glasses, offering food, contributing to discussions with insights drawn from both her experiences as Eric and her evolving life as Grace. "I have to say," Vanessa commented as the night progressed, "you seem different tonight, Grace. More settled, somehow." Grace considered this as she tucked her legs beneath her on the sofa. "I feel different," she acknowledged. "Last month was my first time out as Grace. Tonight feels like coming home to myself in a way." Diana raised her glass. "To authenticity," she proclaimed. "And to friends who let us be our whole, messy, complicated selves." "Hear, hear," the others echoed, clinking glasses. Later, as the evening wound down and goodnights were exchanged at the door, Rebecca hung back slightly. "This was wonderful," she told Grace. "Thank you for letting us be part of your journey." "Thank you for accepting me into yours," Grace replied. After the door closed behind the last guest, Grace turned to find Melissa watching her with a soft expression. "What?" she asked, suddenly self-conscious. "Just admiring you," Melissa said. "You were completely in your element tonight. It was beautiful to watch." Grace moved across the room to wrap her arms around her wife. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." "Yes, you could have," Melissa contradicted gently. "Maybe not in the same way or at the same time, but Grace was always inside you, waiting for the chance to emerge. I just helped open the door." As they stood together in their living room, surrounded by the evidence of a successful evening, empty wine glasses, depleted food platters, scattered throw pillows, Grace felt a profound sense of rightness. The journey ahead might hold challenges, particularly as she contemplated how Grace might extend into other aspects of her life, but the path forward was clearer now. No longer hidden in a cardboard box at the back of a closet, Grace had stepped fully into the light, and in that illumination, she had discovered not just acceptance from others, but a deeper, more complete acceptance of herself. The auburn-haired woman reflected in the mirror was not a disguise or a temporary escape, but an essential, authentic part of who she was. And with Melissa by her side and newfound friends to support her, Grace was ready to continue exploring just how much more of herself remained to be discovered.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!